Well, leaders from the Economic Community of West African States met over this past weekend, and one of the major decisions taken there was to lift economic sanctions imposed on Mali following a military coup there. The military rulers have proposed a 24-month transition to democracy and published a new electoral law. The bloc imposed stiff sanctions on Mali in January after the junta said it would not organize democratic elections the following month as had been initially planned. Advocate Sipho Mantula is joining us now to talk about the developments at the ECOWAS summit held in Accra, Ghana. Advocate, good to have you. I believe you're also on the phone because load shedding, such is life now. But the decision by the ECOWAS leaders to lift economic sanctions on Mali, could they afford at all to not do that?
Jumbo Africa, good afternoon to your viewers. The 61st ordinary session of ECOWAS, you'll understand, held in Ghana yesterday. It was critical in some aspects that we can call an audit or a review of the sanctions of these three countries. But looking at Mali, as you have said, there was concern because what I picked up from their community generally, the sanctions still remains even when you are still having what I will always call stupid sanctions, where you have them on countries rather than individuals. But when you look at this aspect now, what has come out is that based on the transition that Mali has opted to look into, remember they've pushed for 24 months now, they've come up with a new electoral law to deal with their transitional governance issues. So one will say ECOWAS maybe is lenient here because both Guinea-Conakry, Ouagadougou were a bit lenient, but Mali was the hard hit in terms of those sanctions. So what came out from ECOWAS Commission President yesterday, Cassie Brou, I think it was one can say a relief for the Malians, despite that Mali is still having some debts.
Mm-hmm. And the individual sanctions remain, of course, as does Mali's suspension from ECOWAS, the regional bloc. Do you think that's enough leverage then for ECOWAS leaders to ensure that the military leaders then stick to what they've announced as far as the democratic transition?
No, correctly, Tembekile. But you see, like I said earlier, yes, you might have individual sanctions, suspending of ECOWAS from Mali from ECOWAS. But what is critical is the issue of to say, how do you return to the civilian constitutional rule? I think what ECOWAS has been struggling is to understand that the deficit of democracy has shrinked in the Sahel region. And having shrink, I don't think sanctions are viable. One looks at sanctions being used as, one can say, a pressure, a tool, but they're not viable actually, because then you are losing that process of democratizing the Sahel based on what they have went through with this military coups since 2020 until this year in January, when we saw Ouagadougou went through those military change of power. If you look at ECOWAS communique once more again, Tembekile, what you said it is that they are having new mediators even in this conflict or in this coups. You look at Guinea-Conakry, there's a new mediator. And then you look at Mali again, they are looking at the issue of to say Mali should definitely stick to their calendar because there's a tendency of Assimi Goïta changing his statements in most instances.
And just on that, what you touched on, I mean, the ECOWAS leaders appeared more optimistic about a democratic transition in Burkina Faso, in Mali as well, but not so much when it came to Guinea. What makes Guinea so different from the others, and can that itself be addressed as we're now seeing this apparent progress where Mali is concerned?
Remember that Guinea-Conakry had the challenge of former President Alpha Conde, and at the same time, the progress that was not made in Guinea was that Guinea, remember, and I think I've already engaged with you at some point, when Guinea proposed the 36 months transition. Now, ECOWAS and the AU used to say, but that is unthinkable for Guinea to go through that way. Hence, earlier I was mentioning that they have a new mediator, the former president of Benin, Yayi Boni, who will be engaging on the Guinea-Conakry junta to engage on how they can come up with a new timetable, because it seems we are caught up on these key words, the electoral timetable, at the same time return to constitutional rule. So these three Sahel countries, Tembekile, they will still cause headache in the ECOWAS, they will still cause headache in the AU, issues of democracy and governance. How do we sort those issues? Because ordinary people are suffering and are struggling in the Sahel.
How much would you say the security situation across West Africa then has either improved or deteriorated? Because even as recently as June in Burkina Faso, there was concerns about a resurgence in violence. There have been pockets of fighting, as you say, in the Sahel, which has been going on for a number of years now.
The Sahel has been a hot zone in terms of conflict because of its natural resources. And you are correct that Ouagadougou, since last week, there have been some tensions in their borders with Chad, CAR. But at the same time, even if you are having ECOWAS intervening on these military coups, then you have another issue of dealing with the jihadist movements that have been moving in the Sahel. And that's why I think they are losing focus by having this ordinary summit and then selfie moments, when actually the moment that they should be dealing with is to combat counter-terrorism. And you know the AU came up with a very lofty principle that they are going to fight counter-terrorism coming from Tanzania and Algeria. So I think that the AU as well and the regional bodies must emphasize on this issues around how do we counter terrorism in the Sahel, because that has been a challenge even before the coups. Remember, even before military coups, the issues of counter-terrorism have been active in the Sahel based on their natural resources. And again, we cannot rely on foreign military intervention of the former colonial masters. The ECOWAS, AU must beef up its military intervention in those areas that I've already mentioned, that the hotspot in terms of conflict zone in the Sahel.
So if these three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali and Guinea, if they don't stick to their proposed transitional periods, the agreed periods of transition to democratic elections, how vulnerable would they be to other coups? Because, I mean, in some cases, some of these countries have had more than one coup within the space of a year or two.
You know what will happen, and even what I read yesterday, what I picked up, is that their suspension will remain in force until they are able to come to their sense and hold those credible elections. Because what you are having here, is that they need to go to a transitional process through the ballot, not through the bullet. But now if you have the members being suspended, they don't have a voice in ECOWAS. And even at the AU, remember the case study of Khartoum that have been suspended at the AU at some point. So you will not have a voice in the regional body. You will not have a voice even at the continental body. And at the same time, those sanctions affect day-to-day running of the state. Hence, earlier we spoke about individual sanctions. So when we look at that, are sanctions viable for this conflict or this coup? And it is important for ECOWAS and the AU to revive those issues by holding those leaders accountable. Because here you are having young military leaders who are holding power, and they are not willing to go through the ballot, but they want to go through the bullet.
But given that the volatility in this region is years old, how would you assess ECOWAS' effectiveness in responding during moments of crisis?
You know, ECOWAS has... Remember, during the time of Yaya Jammeh, we did have a trust, and we saw ECOWAS as if it is firm on the Gambia issue with Adam Barrow and Yaya Jammeh at some point. We saw ECOWAS coming clear when there was a coup in Ouagadougou at some point during the time of Blaise Compaoré. We saw ECOWAS being firm on the Côte d'Ivoire conflict. But for ECOWAS compared to other regional bodies, I think they have lost credibility with these military coups. Because one will look at that, they have been claiming that there's this dossier, that all these military coups, there is a hidden hand behind. There is a foreign role. I mean, there are foreign countries who are part of this military coups. But ECOWAS, like I said to you, running from Abuja, being stationed in Ghana, one looks at it that it has now become the league of leaders who just go for selfie moments and issuing communiques, that they are no longer active like before. Hence, one will urge that the ECOWAS political thinking or diplomatic assessment conflicts in the West Africa region must be revived, and they should look at the pressing challenges that are facing the citizens of ECOWAS. Because once you look at it as only Tembekile, you forget the citizens of ECOWAS. That will be a detrimental negative impact to ECOWAS as a regional body.
Advocate Sipho Mantula, good to have your thoughts as always. Thank you.